Hi everyone, my name is Aaron and welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about Clearwater's Scientology problem. I'm talking, of course, about Clearwater, Florida. What exactly is the nature of the Scientology problem in Clearwater? Because some might think that the problem Clearwater has with Scientology is just as simple as there's too many Scientologists or Scientology owns too much property. And the reason the existence of Scientology, the presence of Scientology in downtown Clearwater is such a problem goes well beyond whether they own too much property. It goes well beyond the number of Scientologists who live in Clearwater. Because the fact is there actually aren't that many Scientologists who live in Clearwater, but I'll touch on that more in a few minutes. I've touched on this now and again in some of my previous videos, but now that I'm getting ready to run for Clearwater City Council next month, I want to focus a bit on highlighting some of the Clearwater specific problems when it comes to Scientology. So as far as Clearwater is concerned, when it comes to Scientology, the problem Scientology poses for the city of Clearwater, specifically for the downtown Clearwater area, has to do with the very unique type of Church of Scientology that is located in downtown Clearwater. The Church of Scientology that exists here is the only type of Church of Scientology like it in all of Scientology. What Scientology has in Clearwater is what they call the flag land base. And it's not just a single Church of Scientology building like you would find anywhere else in the world. If you go, if you're in Philly or LA or Houston or Dallas or Seattle and you wander by a Church of Scientology, it's just a single building. It might be a large building, but it's just a single building. In Clearwater, you have an entire base. That's their language, it's their terms, it's the flag land base. And yet still, the unique problem that Clearwater has when it comes to Scientology isn't even the fact that it's an entire base. Like, that's not the actual distinguishing difference here of, is it a building or is it a base? The problem for Clearwater is the very unique role that the flagland base plays within the world of Scientology. If the flagland base, or sometimes it's just referred to as flag, if flag were just a normal Church of Scientology, it wouldn't even actually, Scientology's presence wouldn't even actually create much of a problem for the city of Clearwater. Yes, it would still be true that Scientology buying so much property in downtown Clearwater and taking the vast majority of that property that they own off of the tax rolls, yes, that would still create the problem for other tax-paying property owners of raising property taxes, but that will always be true. That's just the tax issue. Clearwater's problem with Scientology goes well beyond the tax issue. But if the flagland base was a normal Church of Scientology, the tax issue would probably be Clearwater's only problem with Scientology. You see, a normal Church of Scientology wants as many non-Scientologists around as possible. That's why most churches of Scientology are located in downtown central areas. These days, Miscavige has sort of changed all this and he started to push the orgs out more to the suburbs. That's a whole other different subject and I don't want to get into all that. But the point is, a normal Church of Scientology really loves having as many non-Scientologists around as possible. A normal Church of Scientology is not opposed in any way to economic development. It is not opposed to tourism. It would not be opposed to having a bar or a restaurant or a theater or even a nightclub right across the street or in the immediate area. These are all things that, as far as a normal Scientology org is concerned, is good for them. This leads us directly to the reason why the flag land base is such a problem for the city of Clearwater. Flag is not a normal Church of Scientology. Flag is the highest level Church of Scientology in the world. The only other Scientology organization that is technically a higher level than Flag is the Ship or the Free Winds. And for the purposes of this conversation, we're not even including that. When I say highest level, that's not referring to the size. I mean, Flag is the biggest Church of Scientology in the world, but that's not what highest level means. For those of you who have even a tiny bit of familiarity with Scientology, you're probably already aware of Scientology's bridge to total freedom. When you get into Scientology, you start at the bottom of the bridge and you work your way up the levels. These levels have different names and they're not even always called levels. We're just using that term for right now. You can roughly break up the bridge between the bottom half of the bridge and the upper half of the bridge. The bottom half of the bridge, that is the kind of Scientology that is delivered at the types of churches of Scientology where you can actually get into Scientology. Which, when you think about it, just makes sense. You see, you can't get into Scientology at all churches of Scientology. You can only join Scientology at lower level organizations. And earlier, when I was referring to a normal Church of Scientology, I'm referring to lower level organizations. In the world of Scientology, they're called Class 5 organizations. They're called that because in those orgs, you can train auditors up to the level of Class 5 graduate. Scientology also has sort of a franchise system where you can have really tiny churches of Scientology that are privately owned. Those are called missions. You can also join Scientology at a mission, but they're not allowed to train professional auditors, but they can sell and deliver professional auditing. So Class 5 organizations and missions together comprise what I'm referring to as lower level Scientology organizations. And those are the vast majority of the churches of Scientology that exist. By the way, did you know there's only 200 churches of Scientology in the entire world? It's true. It's not a lot. And probably about half of them are in the United States. So above lower level organizations, you have Class 6 organizations and Class 9 organizations. These orgs are staffed exclusively by Sea Org members. You cannot join Scientology at those orgs. There aren't very many of them. In the United States, they only exist in Clearwater and in Los Angeles. That's it. In Europe, there's one in Denmark and there's one in St. Hill, England. Those are the only two that exist for the entire European UK continent. In Australia, there's one in Sydney. They did recently open one in Africa. There's one supposedly opening soon in Canada. There's one supposed to open soon in Mexico. But it's only a handful. There aren't very many. And yet FLAG still stands above these other Class 6 and Class 9 organizations. FLAG is a Class 12 organization. You cannot join Scientology at FLAG. You cannot join Scientology in Clearwater, Florida. Isn't that crazy? Clearwater has this reputation of being like a Scientology-owned city or a Scientology-run city. It's not true at all. I do my best to try to push back against that kind of rhetoric because it's absolutely not true. It's just what Scientology wants you to think is true. And not only is it not true, you can't even join Scientology in Clearwater. How many people watching this video right now knew you couldn't join Scientology in Clearwater? Clearwater does not deserve this reputation that it has gotten for being a Scientology city. And I'm going to do everything I can with my messaging on this channel and hopefully, God willing, through my work on the Clearwater City Council, if I manage to win my election, I'm going to do everything I can to change the perception that Clearwater is a Scientology town. So not only can you not join Scientology in Clearwater, if you're a Scientologist from anywhere else in the world, you're not allowed to come here. It's not like the Vatican where a Catholic or even a non-Catholic could go visit the Vatican. You're not allowed to come and visit Clearwater. You have to have prior official full security clearance through Scientology's local security personnel. They review your entire background. They review your auditing history. They review your life history. They review, your basically your record of Scientology. And only once you receive written notification that you are authorized to visit the FLAG land base can you come to FLAG. This has to do with FLAG's unique nature, unique role in the world of Scientology as being the only place in the entire world where Scientologists can do OT7. The only level higher than OT7 that is available for Scientologists to do is OT8. And the only place in the world that you can do OT8 is on the ship, on the free winds. And getting to the free winds is damn near impossible for most Scientologists. So FLAG, if we exclude the free winds from the conversation, is the highest level and most secure Scientology Sea Org base that delivers to public Scientologists in the entire world. And this is the nature of the Scientology problem in Clearwater. This base doesn't even trust Scientologists to come here without prior thorough review and authorization through security. If they don't trust their own members, you can be damn sure they don't trust non-Scientologists anywhere in the vicinity of their base. And that's the problem. Non-Scientologists, being anywhere in the vicinity of the base, don't provide any benefit to Scientology because you can't join Scientology here. And beyond not providing any benefit, non-Scientologists are actually viewed as a security threat to the base, a security risk. This is why if you start walking around the buildings of the base, just minding your own business, not harassing anybody, not doing anything, just give it a few minutes and a security guard on a bike with a walkie-talkie and a mic in his ear will, very nonchalantly start going about his business in your general vicinity. Because there is just a massive distrust between the Sea Org members on the Flagland base and the executives on the base and the security staff on the base and non-Scientologists in general. They have no use for non-Scientologists and therefore the best thing non-Scientologists can do from the viewpoint of the base is to stay the hell away. And by the way, this isn't just hearsay. I spent 3 to 4 years of my life living and working on the Flagland base. I spent about 7 to 8 years of my life working on Sea Org bases in general between Clearwater and in Los Angeles. I know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to how the Sea Org members view non-Scientologists and how Sea Org members on the Flagland base view non-Scientologists in Clearwater. Well, I just noticed my mic had been sitting all the way over there, so if there's a change in the audio, I apologize. So these issues about the base being a base where you can't join Scientology, the base where they don't want non-Scientologists around, the base where they don't even trust regular Scientologists to come here without prior authorization. All of these things are the reasons why Scientology behaves as such a terrible neighbor and community partner in Clearwater. It is very uniquely a Clearwater problem. Because if Flag was just like, let's take the Church of Scientology of Philadelphia, for example. In any other normal environment or situation, the Church of Scientology would go out of its way to be seen as a productive and contributing partner to economic development or community redevelopment, or even just seen as an honest actor or willing contributor to bringing a downtown district back to life. I mean, could you imagine how much genuinely good PR and press Scientology could get if it used its vast economic resources and the vast amount of labor that they have at their disposal, if they used even a portion of those resources to help reinvigorate and re-energize and bring downtown Clearwater back to life? I'm not talking about whether it would be a good idea for the city. If the Church of Scientology had been a primary driver in redeveloping and revitalizing downtown Clearwater, that would probably genuinely give Clearwater an earned reputation for being a Scientology city. So I'm not saying it should happen, but I'm saying, could you imagine how much good press Scientology would get if they were able to seriously contribute to the revitalization of downtown Clearwater? And yet, they don't. They do the exact opposite. They are widely known to work behind the scenes to stifle any efforts at economic redevelopment and community redevelopment. They have a horrible reputation in Clearwater for their behavior. This is totally above and beyond any reputation they have for the crazy beliefs or abusing staff or abusing Scientologists. I'm just focusing right now on the reputation they have for being a horrible community partner. All of these things are the very reasons why David Miscavige orchestrated this giant campaign over the last several years. Tracy McManus wrote about this extensively in the Tampa Bay Times. They organized for about 100 properties in Clearwater's, it's not just the downtown area, it's the community redevelopment district. So approximately 30 different LLCs purchased approximately 100 properties for a total of about $100 million cash, and then just sat on them, left them empty, left them vacant, left them undeveloped. No plans submitted to the permitting department or the building department. No one's trying to renovate these buildings and put tenants in them. This is Scientology's way of preventing the community redevelopment district from actually being redeveloped by buying prime commercial property in this downtown area and just sitting on them. And David Miscavige pretends that he has nothing to do with all this. And we're supposed to believe that a whole group of Scientologists just all at the same time, decided to, in a coordinated effort, spend $100 million to buy commercial property. Oh, and by the way, didn't do anything with it. Like, an investor buys things to get a return. There's no way 30 different Scientologists all just decided to throw money down the drain. By the way, all of these properties were purchased for about 2, 3, 4 times their actual market value. The vast majority of these properties weren't even on the market for sale. So Scientology agents, real estate agents, lawyers, ran around to all these properties, offering them cash, 2, 3, 4 times market value, to obtain this property, which, if you're an investor, implies you have big plans for this property. And then they all just sit on the properties and do nothing. People have a hard time understanding such behavior. The issues that I'm explaining in this video is the explanation for this behavior. It's David Miscavige's way of trying to F the city of Clearwater and its efforts to revitalize downtown. And one of the things that makes all this really interesting is that Scientology is completely incapable of admitting to community leaders, business leaders, city leaders, that this thing I'm explaining about the base having a high concern about security, how you can't join Scientology, how not every Scientologist can even come here, how they view non-Scientologists as a security risk. They're not allowed to be honest about these things to anybody outside of the church. to do so would be a direct violation of every policy L. Ron Hubbard wrote on public relations. They know that if they were to admit this to the city leaders, the community leaders, that everyone would immediately know, oh, your goals aren't aligned with ours. Scientology wants to be viewed as being just as neighborly or community focused as all of the other real churches in the community. So Scientology totally hides these things that I'm explaining in this video. There's no city official that David Miscavige or Pat Harney or Lisa Mansell or Peter Mansell has ever sat down with and said, hey, look, can we talk about, our concerns versus the city's concerns? No one from the church has ever sat down with anyone in the city and been like, do you guys understand that, we would like to keep the area around the base as quiet as possible because, we don't actually, you can't join Scientology here. And we'd like, we'd like to have a buffer around the base. And that's why we buy some of these properties that we don't really need. We just want to, in the spirit of cooperation and working together, let us make sure you understand the nature of this church within the landscape of Scientology. No such conversation has ever occurred. No one at the base will ever admit that they don't want non-Scientologists around. So they do things to make it look like they like non-Scientologists. For a few years, they were sponsoring quarterly block parties. They would put on these big frickin' parties with live music and free food and everything. The only people who would attend these parties was a smattering of Scientologists and the homeless who would show up and eat all the free food. Flag donates money now and again to some local causes. They donated, I think, almost $100,000 to help get a memorial for veterans built at a park near my house. I got a call from a woman who owns a church downtown that was like worried because the flag was donating money to her church, which is like a legit Christian church. And she's like, what's going on here? And I'm like, oh, this is called safe pointing. This is something Scientology does just to get people to like them, so that when people like me are out there exposing some of the abuses of Scientology, someone like you who took money from them will go, well, that's not my experience with Scientology. They were always super nice with me. This guy, there must be more to the story. Every year Flag puts on a Christmas thing in downtown Clearwater called Winter Wonderland. They take a parking lot for one of their seldom used buildings and they construct this really cool Christmassy thing that kids can go to. And it's hard to describe, but it's pretty big and it's pretty cool and it's free for anyone in the community. And it's actually one of the better examples of something Scientology does to create good PR. One of the funny things about that, though, is they even stopped saying that thing was funded by Flag. Flag created one of its many stupid little front groups called Clearwater Community Volunteers or something, just something that totally made up. And they say it's sponsored by that. Again, it's kind of a reflection. It's this weird thing where on the one hand, they want to create good PR for Scientology and for Flag, but on the other hand, their reputation is so toxic that putting their name on anything is actually bad PR. So even this good PR thing like Winter Wonderland no longer says like sponsored by Flag. It's like sponsored by Clearwater Community Volunteers, which is just Flag. So I really don't think this particular aspect of the unique nature of the Flag land base and what that has to do with Clearwater Scientology problem, I'm not sure that's very well understood in the community. I think it's possible that people in Clearwater have just come to think that Scientology in general is a very, insular, not friendly organization, which in many ways that is true. It's kind of this strange dichotomy that exists in Scientology where on the one hand, they are very closed and secretive and dishonest about how they represent themselves. And on the other hand, they actually do want everyone to become a Scientologist. So the dichotomy is that they would be viewed as being insular or secretive, when in reality, they want everyone to join. They just don't want you to join in Clearwater. You can join Scientology in Tampa. You can join Scientology in Bel Air. You can join Scientology in Ybor City, but you can't join Scientology in Clearwater. Sometimes I'll get a message from somebody saying like, I was down at Coachman Park, which is right by the Flag land base. I was down at Coachman Park and they were trying to recruit people. And I'll go, well, what do you mean they were trying to recruit people? Well, they were handing out leaflets. They were handing out Scientology promo. And I go, but was it Scientology promo or did it say something like Youth for Human Rights? Yeah, it was the Youth for Human Rights. Or was it like a Truth About Drugs pamphlet? Yeah, it was Truth About Drugs. And I'm like, that's not what recruiting for Scientology looks like. You don't recruit someone into Scientology by handing them a leaflet about drugs. You don't recruit someone to Scientology by handing them a leaflet about human rights. These organizations are just kind of silly front groups that Scientology has created to make it look to the outside world like this is a religious organization that focuses its attention outside of the organization and onto the world because it wants to be viewed like other major religions are viewed. Scientology tries to portray itself and wants to be viewed as an organization that exists for the benefit of all, as opposed to just for the benefit of Scientologists. And that's the only reason it does these things. The volunteer ministers, the Youth for Human Rights, drug-free marshals. The truth is, internally in Scientology, Scientologists don't even care about these front groups. It's like a chore to have to do anything involving these front groups. And your mainline Scientologists who are on staff at missions or on staff at orgs or who are Sea Org members, they actually view these front groups as more of a distraction than anything else. Like in the world of Scientology, if you work for Youth for Human Rights International, if you're one of these poor Sea Org members who just happen to be posted as the receptionist at the Youth for Human Rights International office or whatever, you are considered a giant loser. Like, those organizations have nothing to do with getting people into Scientology and getting them up the bridge. And your hardcore mainline Scientologists know and understand that the only reason Scientology exists, the only thing Scientologists are interested in, is getting people into Scientology and up the bridge. And all of this other stuff that you see through its various front groups, that's just window dressing. That's just cute stuff that exists for press releases and articles. That's just stuff Scientology does so that when people are criticizing it for human rights abuses and human trafficking and wire fraud, they can point to, but look at how many school children we educated on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Like, it's all window dressing, it's all bullshit, and Scientologists know that. So the fact is, the Church of Scientology is currently the aggressor in a cold war they are waging against the city of Clearwater, whether the leadership of the city of Clearwater understands that or not. And this is one of the reasons I will be running for Clearwater City Council next month. I have gotten very weary and sick and tired of trying to convince and educate city leadership on the nature of the flagland base and what can be done about it. I don't want to be one of these talking heads who's always talking about their great ideas on how this could be done better and that could be done better, but at the end of the day aren't doing anything about it. You know, you see a lot of the talking heads in the media, whether you're on both the left or the right, it doesn't matter. I stay very non-political on this channel. And these guys are constantly acting like they know the best way to handle local issues, state issues, national issues, foreign policy issues. And I've always asked myself, why don't they run for office and do the things they keep talking about? Well, that's what I'm doing when it comes to Scientology and Clearwater. I'm not going to spend any more time trying to educate someone on what they can do or should do, or to convince them why it would be a good idea or why it would work. I'm totally done with that. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to show them. When you hear someone, when it comes to Scientology, Clearwater, let's talk about Scientology's tax-exempt status and getting it revoked. When you hear someone going on and on about how such and such can't be done or so-and-so will never work, you only need to know one thing about that person. They're obviously not the expert on the subject. Because if they were the expert, they wouldn't be telling you what can't be done. They would be telling you what can be done. And even better, they would just be doing it. So for all the citizens of Clearwater, for anyone who wants to take back downtown Clearwater, when you understand these things about the flag land base, there's one conclusion you can come to. The best thing to do to take back downtown Clearwater and to give a big F you to David Miscavige is just come back to downtown Clearwater. They just simply don't want you there. So the best thing you can do is to go down there. People say to me all the time that one of their concerns in going to downtown Clearwater and spending money at some of the great bars and restaurants and cafes that are opened up down there is they're worried about putting money into the pocket of Scientology. And they're worried that even if those places are owned by Scientologists, they're worried about putting money into the pocket of a Scientologist who will turn around and give that money to Scientology. And so what I tell them is this. In all of downtown Clearwater, on Cleveland Street, the 400 block, 500 block, 600 block, which for all intents and purposes at this point is downtown Clearwater, there's only one food and drink establishment that is owned by a Scientologist, and that's Carolyn's Kitchen. Every other place is owned by a non-Scientologist, and these places succeed because they're patronized by non-Scientologists. The future of downtown Clearwater is very bright, and I believe Clearwater will win this Cold War that Scientology is waging against it. But it needs leaders who understand that they're actually in a war. They need leaders who understand the intentions and motivations of the aggressors in this war and are prepared to publicly do something about it and also work behind the scenes to do something about it. All right, everyone, that's all I have to say for now on this subject. Thank you very much for watching. For those of you who watched until the very end, thank you very much, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. I want to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Dream Realty. Oh wait, that's me! I've been a real estate investor for over 20 years. I bought my first investment property when I was 20 years old. For the last 15 years, I've been buying and selling my own properties all over Clearwater and Tampa Bay. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home and you'd like to work with me, get in touch and I'll get it done for you. Thanks again to everyone who supports this channel, and thank you for watching.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe